Alright, we're here. So this past weekend has actually been filled with a bunch of mainstream releases that I wanted to talk about. Of course, the first film that I had to get to was the one that I was most excited for, and that was Pearl, and I think it's warranted to say that that was worth reviewing first, but I also was very interested in another release this weekend, and that is See How They Run, which is directed by Tom George, a whodunit mystery that people seem to think gave off very similar auras to like something from Martin McDonagh or something from Wes Anderson, primarily Wes Anderson, and I was very excited to see this. It looked very fun, just like an enjoyable time at the cinema, and guess what? That is literally exactly what I got from See How They Run. I had a great time. Now, the first thing to talk about here, probably for me, at least in any ensemble film, is the ensemble themselves, because they are what make the movie work or not work, essentially. I would say that all performances are really good, but there are three standouts here for me. And the first one is pretty obvious. It is Saoirse Ronan. Everyone knows that Saoirse Ronan is one of the best actors in Hollywood nowadays, and she does great in the dramatic roles that are provided for her, such as in Little Women, in Brooklyn, things along those lines. In an underrated film that I very much liked, Lost River, I thought she was fantastic. But she's also been great in more quirky roles, like in the Wes Anderson movies like French Dispatch, Grand Budapest, even Lady Bird, which I'm not that big of a fan of. But we've never really gotten to see her dominate a comedic role, and that's absolutely what she does here. It seems that she is given free will to just go crazy, and she is hilarious, the best part of this movie by far, charismatic, and basically steals the show every time that she is on screen. Wonderfully goofy, fantastic performance by her. The other two that I'd like to go over first, there is David Oyelowo, who I think is immensely underrated as an actor, and his kind of snooty, pretentious vibe that he gives off here works perfectly with the writer, the playwright of the play that is going on. Wonderfully done. And then finally, another performance I would like to highlight is Adrien Brody as the stuck-up film director who thinks he can do whatever he wants. And to be fair, that is a role that Adrien Brody was simply meant to play. And then everyone else was great. And then I guess I'll also give a mention to the main character of the film, Sam Rockwell. A relatively impressive British accent did not stick out as horrible, especially amidst the whole Harry Styles American accent, don't worry darling fiasco. It is nice to see someone do a pretty good job with a foreign accent in a film. And Sam Rockwell is also hilarious, and especially his physical comedy in this is to be commended. Now, this next point to me is very important in films that I watch, especially comedies. This was a complete breath of fresh air because it's a movie that is a throwback to when films knew how to have fun. Even in comedies nowadays, there's such a sense of try-hardness, trying to stuff every moment with a punchline, trying to stuff every character with a bunch of quirks that aren't really essential to the plot but could maybe get a laugh here or there sporadically. It's so infuriating to just watch a film try to put everything in everything, just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, and be rewarded because maybe 5 things stuck, and so therefore the audience thinks that they had a good time. See How They Run is a perfect example of letting the story flow and letting the humor flow with it. There's nothing forced, it's completely natural. The transitions are great, the joke setups are fantastic, and the jokes always land because they're not always forced in there. They come when it's natural. The whole setup of the actual film is kind of genius. The meta commentary here works better than I've seen in any film in recent memory. As you know, I am very sick of meta commentary in films, but it does work here, and I do have to appreciate it for that. and it's just enjoyable, man. I got to sit there. I laughed in this film more than I've laughed, I think, in any other film this year. The coming in second is actually Pearl. So the two films from this weekend are the funniest films that I've seen this year. And I don't know, man, I just relaxed. I sat back. I didn't turn my brain off, but it was to a level of that. You know what I mean? Which kind of feeds into the negatives, but we'll get there. But it's a pretty basic plot structure, but you just kind of just let yourself go and enjoy the ride, and that is what I loved about this movie. I'd also like to give a giant shout out to Daniel Pemberton for the score of this film. It mainly consists of jazz, but it's a big variation of jazz, and it kind of finagles its way into building the emotion of every scene very well. Sometimes I'll listen to scores and it's just kind of, it seems like it's just unrelated to the actions going on screen, and that's very frustrating to have that contrast. But this score really, and I know that sounds super basic, but it's not something that a lot of composers think about. This score just smoothly goes along with what's going on screen, and I do have to commend Daniel Pemberton for that, who also did another score very similar to this with The Bad Guys. So shout out to him. All right, it is time to, unfortunately, talk about the negative of this movie for me that I previously alluded to. It might be a little bit to completely unfold this with the complexities that it has, and it might be a little bit difficult for me to portray, but just bear with me. I promise I'm going to do my best. So there is a very meta commentary aspect here on the whodunit. At the beginning of the film, Adrian Brody's character says, "You seen one, you seen them all," kind of displaying that cynical mindset on whodunits. The problem for me is that is exactly the problem. I knew, and this is something that I have a hard time going between, like, blaming the actual film or blaming my mindset. I knew what the whole deal was from about the first 20 minutes, half an hour in. I knew who it was, and it was who I thought it was, and there's nothing really about this story that jumps out as transforming the genre or doing anything different than the average whodunit other than the meta commentary. And my problem with meta commentary is properties usually use meta commentary to comment on what they're doing, but then they don't transform it in any way. You know what I mean? Rick and Morty uses meta commentary on what they are talking about, but they just do the thing. They just do what they're making the commentary on. They're like, oh my gosh, isn't this so crazy that we're doing this? But you're still doing it, therefore you're still falling into the generic schlock that you're kind of poking fun at. And although I would not say See How They Run goes to that extent, there still is nothing really innovative about this film other than the meta commentary on whodunits. And that bothers me. It doesn't bother me so much as to completely detract away from my viewing experience, but it does prevent me from elevating it to that higher level of, like, mystery classics. You know what I mean? It's just not there for me. It's not on the level of, like, a Knives Out, because it is just a generic whodunit. And yeah, sure, there's meta commentary on it, but does that really boost the I was thinking lessen and boost, I combined the two words. Does that really boost the effectiveness of what the film is trying to do? I would argue that it doesn't. With all that being said, let's not detract from the fact that I do think See How They Run is a good film. It's well executed, it's hilarious, it's very, very quirky, very dry comedy that I love to see. It's perfectly paced comedy as well. It's not drawn out too long, and it doesn't rush to the punchline, which is a balance that's very hard to find. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to be giving See How They Run a 7 out of 10. I would also, guess what, implore you to go see this in theaters. It is so fun, a great time. You can go see this by yourself and have a good time. You can go see this with other people and have a good time. I actually caught this at a closed caption screening, so I was surrounded by a bunch of older people, and it was so much fun. They were all laughing, and it was just such a wholesome, nice time. Really good movie. amazing weekend. Very interesting to see the other film that I have scheduled, which is The Woman King, sorry. Anyways, go see how they run. Alright, so that is it for this video. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one. Goodbye.